We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. On January 26, 2020, we lost our beloved basketball icon, Kobe, and his daughter, Gianna Bryant, in a tragic accident. But we remain grateful for the Black Mamba mantra that he left us, perplexed, but not in despair. The week of March 15th, we were abruptly cast into quarantine, but we learned to adjust while resuming classes online and improvising milestone celebrations with drive-by graduations and birthday parades. Persecuted but not abandoned. In late April, video footage of Ahmaud Arbery's savage and senseless murder began to circulate on social media. Though heartbroken, we hoped that the indisputable footage would result in a swift conviction. Struck down but not destroyed. In May, we were excited to enter phase one reopenings, but became incensed when we learned of the modern day lynchings of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, and that made us remember Emmett Till, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, Mike Brown, and the list goes on and on. As a consequence, we collectively said, enough is enough. This has been a uniquely challenging year, to say the least, rife with disappointments, heartache, anger, and rage, all validated emotions and reactions. So tonight, on behalf of Pastors Eric and Twiggy Eure, and the On the Move ministry at the Promised Land Church, it is my privilege and honor to welcome you and thank you for being present in this space where you all can speak out on the atrocities taking place across communities in our nation. You are welcome to this space to talk about what you see as viable solutions and policies to address these ills. You are welcome to this space to talk about your feelings and emotions. And lastly, this space exists for us to help each other cope because Black Lives Matter and Black youth voices matter. So without further ado, I'm excited to introduce the outstanding panel and host that will be conversing tonight. Kyra Coffin is from Albany, New York. She's a Syracuse University graduate student studying her Master's of Public Administration and also a Master's in International Relations. Our second host is Kenyon Black of Syracuse, New York. He is the esteemed director of the Upward Bound program at Lemoyne College. Our panelists include Diamari Copeland, a sophomore at Onondaga Community College studying criminal justice, Sydney Eure, a senior at SUNY Oswego, majoring in broadcasting and mass communications, Gavin Collins, also a sophomore at Onondaga Community College, majoring in music, Beloved Nicholson, 2020 graduate, and who will be attending North Carolina A&T this upcoming fall and plans to major in animal science. Miss Jessica Watson-Reyes, 2020 graduate from the EMT program at Onondaga Community College. And last but not least, Minister Rhea Parks, who has a limited permit in marriage and marriage and family therapist. So without further ado, I'll turn the conversation over to Kyra.
Good evening, everybody. So we're first going to start talking about the impact of COVID-19. I'm going to kind of go in chronological order about all of the different things that have been going on in the country and in our world. So I first want to hear from some of our panelists how are you coping with what's happening? What has the impact been for you? Any losses that you have felt or witnessed? And I don't just mean, a life, milestones that you were waiting for that didn't happen, experiences that you were waiting for that didn't happen, just a lot of different things, because I think what has also happened with COVID-19, it has forced us to pause. And in that pause, a lot of our coping mechanisms are now gone, and some of them are not healthy coping mechanisms. And the one that comes for me is hyperproductivity. That is like a huge coping mechanism that people use, including myself, to not face with like other things because you just don't want to think about it. So what happens is it just sits in the back of your mind and it just never gets healed. You have unresolved issues, personal or not. So I really like to hear how people have been either coping. If you're not coping, that's okay too. This is what this platform is for. So I'd like to hear people's experiences with that.
I can go first. So uh with COVID-19, our my high school senior year has been cut short, and we've been online classes. And cope with that, I've like slept a lot. Like I was always sleeping. It's not healthy, but like I slept. Like I stopped doing assignments. It's horrible. And then my mom, like, she helped me motivate me. Like she's like, you got to get your stuff done. And then I got a job. So I think that was like the best thing I could have done, was like get a job. It helped me like regain my motivation and my strive to do something and do stuff. So that's how I coped. Yeah, with COVID.
Um, Before someone else goes, it's funny that you say you slept a lot because I have the exact opposite. I'm not sleeping, like at all, practically. And my little brother and I practically have insomnia at the moment. I know a lot of people who are suffering with, you know, some acute insomnia right now, um, because stress, I guess. I'm not really sure what the real reason is, but I know that I'm far from the only one. I'll be on Instagram and there's plenty of other kids on Instagram at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, just scrolling. And I think what's happening is we're becoming like functional with the stress. Just like you have functional addicts and alcoholics, I think some of us are becoming functional with our distress and our stress, um, and telling ourselves that we're okay because, you know, we're eating, we're okay, but we're really not okay. And I think that if we pay more attention to like our physiological signs, that kind of shows where our mental is as well. Because in my mind, I'm telling myself I'm okay. Like, you know, I'm okay. I don't feel depressed, but like I'm not okay, clearly, because I cannot sleep. I don't have as much as an appetite as I normally have an appetite for. I don't have the energy that I normally have. And I'm not even exerting energy with much. Like I don't do anything to be tired. So I think that that's a sign that some of us are becoming functional in the distress that we're in. And I think that this is a good time to like kind of get out of that. So if anybody else can attribute to what I'm saying or anything different, totally add to the conversation.
Yeah, I agree with like the becoming functional kind of thing, because for me personally, it was like very overwhelming to kind of like day after day, like week after week, hear about something that's been added to like this long list of like injustice that our people have had to endure. So I think for me, like the way I've been like trying to cope with it is to just really become like more informed about what's really going on, and like really like focus in on like what my thoughts are actually about the topics at hand, because I have like I went to like a predominantly white high school and even college even, and a lot of those people that I have been around have been reaching out to me like asking like how are you, this and that, and I want to be able to like have a good like concise thought about what I feel, because those people are coming to me. Like for some people they don't have like somebody else that they can ask to, how can I help, what are you looking for, what do you need from me. So I want to be able to kind of inform myself as much as possible so that when people do come to me I can give them a good solid like informed perspective on what they can do to help me even, and people that are like me.
I'll go. Um, uh, I'm kind of the opposite of what Kyra was saying. Um, with the sleeping process, I haven't been sleeping either. But with coping, I think I've been eating way more, which is really not good. And I've been working. I haven't stopped working. I'm considered an essential worker. So I've been working nonstop. So with that, that really doesn't help with COVID. And now that our restaurant was opened really early and I was nervous about like getting COVID, being tested positive for it. So it was, I had to process being open, having to wear the mask and all that other stuff. So it's become a lot, but I think I'm getting used to it now. So I think the eating is just like, that's my coping method right now, which isn't good, but that's how I'm coping with everything.
Yeah, a lot of like the main thing for me is that I realize at least is that the one thing that this time period exposes is how much humans need routine and need like a plan and need to know what's going on and everything. And it happens so it happened so fastly that there was a lack of information. There were so many questions, but everything still happened fluidly, happened. So we had to kind of adapt. And for me, I'm fine with change. Like I don't mind one thing happen and then plans shift or things turn out a different way. But a lot of people that I talk to or people that I converse with, they're going through a tough time because they're not really okay with change. Like they don't know how to deal with it. They can't find those coping mechanisms. They don't have any because they just go day-to-day life and everything. For me, I was doing track. I was working out every day. I'm a music major, so all of my classes and all of my tests or any assignments or whatever, I'm playing in front of professors or I'm doing everything hands-on. And to switch all that over into like face-to-face through Zoom or phone calls or anything like that, recordings and stuff, that's the most challenging part because it's like, how do I find a routine so I can practice, so I can work out every day, so I can eat properly, sleep properly, like you guys were saying. So yeah, that was my main thing, trying to find like a solid routine so I'm not falling behind, so to say.
I would just like to interject really quickly. I 100% agree with what Gavin just said, and I would really like to hear from Minister Rhea if she has any input, especially being, a therapist, because literally that is exactly what I've been feeling like as far as a routine, and if not a routine, a rhythm at the very least, because I am okay with things not working out exactly how I planned them, and I'm good at being able to pivot. I can pivot a little bit, but to like rewrite, reschedule, redo is just too much and all within a short amount of time. And I think why humans anywhere, we get anxiety from a lot of that because anxiety is a result of not knowing like how something is going to turn out, whether you're worrying about something that induces a lot of anxiety. And I think it's just been hard for people to go cope because there's no end date to COVID. Like there's nothing you can do your own self to know when COVID is going to end. And I think humans like to categorize things because it makes more sense in your mind. And we are able to, we have a calendar. We know when seasons come. We know even when you're like your track, Gavin, I used to run track, coach would say, hey, you got 10 ladders today. Hated it. But as each ladder goes down, I know I'm almost done. I'm almost done. I'm almost done. 2 more to go. And I feel like with COVID, you feel like we're almost done. Like New York as a whole is doing really well as far as the cases. And then you see part of the other country just exploding, like going crazy. So you don't know. And there's no signal. There's no timing unless God is telling you, please let me know too. Like, I don't know when this is going to end. So I'd really like to hear from Minister Ray, see if she has any input as far as like how to deal with that anxiety, how to change, how to be more how to adapt to those changes.
So, and again, like you said, because there's no, like, we don't know the end of this, the best advice I can give everybody, like with the unknown and just the whole experiencing the increased anxiety. So there's, if anybody hasn't heard, but there's this thing called mindfulness, and it's truly just being present in the moment. It's not ignoring what's going on, but it's almost like this sense of just kind of embrace it and embrace it to the point, like be mindful in the moment that you're in the space that you're in, what you're doing in that moment, and literally take what you're doing in that moment and translate that or duplicate that with, this is what I'm doing for today. Because the reality is what you're doing today could be very different with what you're doing tomorrow, and just really welcoming that. And I know for some people it's going to be easier in comparison to others, where just hearing the thought of,
well, your day is going to be completely different tomorrow and you just have to embrace it. That in itself can be very triggering, and it can cause like a slew of emotions. So literally it's as simple as, like, if you wake up in the morning and you can tell that you're anxious just because your day is going to be different, something that you can do the moment you plant your feet on the floor, just be mindful in the moment to how your feet feel on whatever surface you're on. Literally taking a deep breath of air and be present in the moment of, okay, I'm taking in this fresh air. How does the air feel as I inhale through my nose? How does it feel when I'm blowing the air out of my breath? It can be something as simple as you go outside for a walk and just be mindful with how the sun feels as it's hitting your skin, how the wind feels as it's blowing against your skin. Just really being present in the day-to-day stuff. And honestly, try and not worry about so much as to what tomorrow is going to bring, but just really focusing on how can I be present and how can I be mindful in what I have going on today.
Minister Ria, I have a question about mindfulness. I, similar to Kyra, dealt with insomnia at the onset of all of this. One thing that helped me was meditation. Yep. Is that something you would recommend? I know I found some like websites that have guided meditations, because meditation was like, what is this? But guided meditation helped me to really understand what you mean when you say like how my feet feel on the ground. Do you know of any websites for guided meditation that you could recommend? Are there any websites that you could recommend for like guided meditations?
Yeah, so there's there are websites as well as you can download the apps. There's one called Calm, and there's another app/website called Headspace. And literally, I don't know, I have both of them. One of them you can literally put in, like when you log into or when you get the app, it'll ask you like, what are you trying to like, what do you want your meditations to be around? And you can put like experiencing anxiety, experiencing depression, and they will put together guided meditation specifically based on what you put in that you're experiencing or what you're hoping to get or gain from the meditation.
And I guess just to close out my little section on COVID, I think I'd like to pivot a little bit and go back to what I was when I was speaking about hyperproductivity being a coping mechanism. It also has made me question what I get gratification from. So, and like, what is a part of my identity? Like, is this something that you do or is this who you are? Then those are very two different things. And I think as a teenager and as a young adult, especially like when you're in high school, you know, you try to be the athlete, especially we're all Christians and we're in church. You want to be in church and you want to be in your ministry. You want to be an A student. You want to be a good child, and like all of these different things. And your identity like has kind of like this flow, and some people gravitate to one, some people gravitate towards others, some encompass them all very well. But it's really made me question what I get gratification from, because none of that stuff is open. So like the things that you do that help fill your cup when you feel empty does not seem to be, you know, accessible. Even if it's just, you know, I really like to go hang out with my friends and go to dinner every Friday or something like that. You can't do that anymore. So I'd really like to hear like what people have turned to. And this is different than coping, I feel like, because coping is just how you are just maintaining. But I feel like when you are empty, you need something to refill that. So like, obviously I see in comments talking about, you know, this is a time for your faith to grow and things of that nature. So are people, you know, taking advantage of this time to spend more time with Christ? Other things I'd like to hear as well, of course, as well.
I think a big thing is that this time period kind of showed what is necessary and what is solid in the sense of what pertains to each individual person. Like, say I like going out on Friday nights to the mall, I like seeing a movie or doing that, and that makes me happy, and that's what gets me through that day. But I also come back home to a family, come back home to a bed, come back home to happiness within my household. And since the movie and the mall is taken away, I'm still left with the thing that matters, or the thing that's there to stay or solid. Like, because a big misconception, especially speaking like with church and stuff, is, oh, we go to church and that's where we get our happiness and that's where we get our our satisfaction throughout the week. But since that's taken away now, what are we left with? And we got to realize that in a church sense, that like we're the church and the church stays like say within us, and what we have left is what's gonna give us that fuel. And when we use like buildings and we use material things or things that we go to as those things that carry us, that's when we can get confused and get set back and think that we're losing things, you know what I mean, instead of paying attention to the things that we already have.
That was really good. Anybody else?
I have a question. So I'll start with Beloved. Do you feel like this social isolation period and not being able to go to church, to piggyback off of what was said prior to, do you think that's brought you closer to God or farther away? Because I'll have a moment of transparency. It kind of, I guess, if we make a time demarcation, right, from when this all started, when social isolation started up until now, kind of like in the midpoint, I honestly was feeling unfavored. Like in the beginning, I was like, okay, this is cool. We do church online. That's fine. The church is not just a building, but it's it's me. It's okay. I can do this online thing. God is good, God is great. But then, as time has progressed, we still don't have a cure. There's so much uncertainty. And I feel like there's so much in life that I'm missing out on. Like there were these trips I wanted to take, and there were these experiences that I wanted to have. And admittedly, at one point, I was starting to feel unfavored. Like, why is this happening when, like, in my prime, in my peak? But, having to go back, I am feeling like, as I'm coming into this point of acceptance, I am feeling closer to God, because it has, made me study my Bible even more. And I have been praying like I have not in a while. So, Beloved, can you speak to that? Do you think it's brought you closer? Did you have a period of like, God, why is this happening to me? My senior year, like really no prom, huh?
So yeah, I felt the same way, like, why is this happening like this year? Like any other year could happen, but my year, I felt like, I don't know, like he was punishing us. I don't know why. But then I started to like go online for church and stuff, and like the messages that Pastor has been saying recently have like really been hitting me. So I felt like, okay, maybe this should just happen for a reason. Like I needed to take a step back and look at like what is happening and why it's happening. And like with my senior year, my prom and stuff and graduation, it has nothing but God that I have a mom that I have, because she's making my own prom, my own graduation. Like she's making everything happen. Like and like I just wanted prom because my dress, like I didn't even really like them people to go to be there. But to have my own prom, I'm like, this is perfect. Like I'm by myself. So yeah, and then there's Adopt a Senior on Facebook. Like I've been meeting people that like want to help and support me throughout my senior year. And I'm like, this is like nothing but God, because like these people, I don't even know these people, but they are sending me gifts and like supporting me, and like they're here for me. And I'm like, that couldn't have happened unless all of this happened. So I have been praying more, all of that, everything. So this just, it turned out perfect. A bad situation that turned good.
What about you, Sydney? Because I know you had a great career. You were at the like when you covered with the primary in New Hampshire, I think. So it seems like things were taking off for you really well, and then boom.
Yeah, it's definitely hard, like being like a broadcast major, not being able to like be in the studio for class. So I mean, it definitely hurt. It would like put like a halt in like creating like my resume reel that I would need to like go out and get jobs and internships. But I mean, the professors were good about like kind of going with the flow. So like we had to kind of switch over to just doing podcasts, which is less like visual content, which isn't as like for like distributing out. But I mean, it helped me like become a better writer, which is really the core of what I'm going to have to end up doing in the grand scheme of it all. So that's the kind of takeaway I focus my mind on. Well, just become a better writer. Like, you're going to need it regardless. And that's kind of what I try to focus on and things like that. So.
And what about your relationship with God? Stronger, about the same?
It's definitely on the rise, I would say. Because I mean, I've been having a lot of time to just kind of write like songs, like lyrics, definitely, because I mean, it's just like me, some time and some guitar, like trying to like, so I've been trying to like leave time to really just think about the things I've been going through and kind of like put it in songs, like, because that's kind of my like coping mechanism, to go back to what Kyra was saying, just write about how I feel so I don't like necessarily keep it all inside. So I'm not really like the greatest like speaker, but like, so I feel like writing songs is like my way to kind of get out what I'm trying to say. So I think that's been like something I've been trying to do a lot, like to figure out what I'm really feeling and like draw closer to him. Sometimes I'll like go over to church, just kind of like sing there and like just play music there and just trying to like be in his presence when I can. So just things like that. And like, of course, like going to church online, I'm definitely like tuning in a lot more. And I feel like it's easier to like focus in on the message, like when it's on the computer or on the phone, because it's like, it's just all right there, you know? So I feel like that's been a good thing for me as well. So yeah.
And then Diomari, like having to be an essential worker, did you feel forsaken at one point, or you feel stronger now?
Okay, there we go. I think I feel stronger now that I've dealt with it and I've gotten I've gotten myself together dealing with the pandemic, only because when the pandemic hit, it just like hit. It wasn't like, oh, I know this is getting ready to happen, so let me prepare myself for work and all that other stuff. It was just a hit. So with work, we began to lose people. So then for myself, I had to become that person it wasn't that I had to, but I chose to take other shifts and stuff like that to make sure that we're set for work. I've had some gains with that and I've had some losses with that. I got promoted during the pandemic, so that was one gain. But like I said, losing people during the pandemic, not just with work, but family, has been a lot. So it's a lot to process. But it's definitely had my relationship with God have gotten really closer. Me and my friends pray like every other day. I've been reading my Bible more and I just like sit with myself. And I think with the church, I don't miss the church. I think I just miss the church people. So it's just like I'm used to being around all these people on a Sunday morning, and now I'm just looking on the screen. So it's different, but it's brought me closer with him. Singing, I've been doing that, but I feel like it's not the same with singing in church. So it's a process, but I'm getting used to it now. But again, hopefully we're out of it soon, but we don't know where the end is. So
I definitely want to echo Sydney, especially with her being, a senior in college and preparing her resume. I was supposed to be going abroad and doing a lot of research and staying in Chile for 6 months and traveling throughout South America for a little bit. That is about 50% of the reason why I chose Syracuse University in the first place, because I was looking for a program that allowed me to do that. So to have one of those main reasons why I chose to move here taken away from me, I was super bummed. And what I hear a lot of people talking about is basically really symbolic losses. And you have the right to grieve those. You have the right to sit in that and settle in that and feel that something was taken away. Not to sound like all extra, but like I do listen to a lot of like podcasts and stuff with like doctors who are psychiatrists and therapists. And they say that your mind doesn't know the difference a lot of the times between um like losses physically and symbolically. So things that are things that make you really sad, whether it be like a person was taken away from you or an event was taken away from you, your mind kind of process them kind of similarly. So you have the right to like be sad about that. I don't want people to feel that. And people are losing their lives. Like that is a real thing. Like people are really losing their lives from this. But I also don't want I hear people feeling, especially online, you know, we live on social media at this point. I really feel people feeling bad about feeling sad. And like, you shouldn't feel bad about feeling sad. Like, you know, beloved, you had the right to a graduation, you had the right to a prom. Sydney, you had the right to have these experiences. We all worked hard for it, and your work hard should be noted. It's an achievement. So it's okay. But obviously don't sit in that forever, and know that for me, I have definitely stayed strong and steadfast and unmovable during this time, because God has continued to show me favor regardless of what is happening. While I don't have, you know, I'm not going to have that experience. I have traveled the world already. I plan on traveling the world in the future. So it is okay. It's not the end of the world. But I have continued to be blessed in spite of things that have not been able to happen for me that I had planned for. Things that I have not planned for have now come into my life that I had no vision to see ever happening unless this happened. So my vision has been broadened and expanded in a way that has never been. And I'm very excited for the next year, even though I'm hoping COVID goes away at some point, but I am very excited for the future, close future.
Just kind of piggyback off what you said, I think it's kind of like the beauty in COVID could be like a lot of us, especially like young people, we get in a system of just like plan this, do this school 4 years, graduate, do all these plans. So I think the beauty in like having COVID kind of slow us down gives us an opportunity to kind of turn back to God and allow Him to kind of order our steps when we feel like we don't know which way to go. Like, what else are you gonna do but like turn to God and be like, yo, like I'm really down and out. I don't know. I don't have anybody else. Can you please just help me figure it out? I think like some of the most beautiful things can come out of that, really.
Absolutely. So, you know, as I alluded to or talked about in the introduction, first we were hit, you know, with what for in our minds, the untimely passing of Kobe Bryant. Then we had COVID and we got the social isolation. So that turned everything upside down. And then lo and behold, you know, we have these issues with social justice or social injustices. So we want to kind of make a pivot and talk about how you all are being impacted and how you're feeling about, you know, the political and socioeconomic climate that we are currently living in. And so, Kyra, I'll kick it back to you, or Kenyon, I'm sorry.
No problem. My question is, with Black Lives Matter, what has been your experience being a part of it? Because it's the youth that's really making things happen. You know, older people like, not me, but like older people like, you know, your parents and your grandparents. Yeah, don't be smiling. Whatever. So what has it been like for you? And when you get home, how are you like digesting what just happened at a Valley? So I would love to hear from the youth.
Gavin, let's start with you.
Okay. So like watching everything that's been happening, to me, it doesn't seem like anything changed, especially from like way back in the 50s and 60s. Like I don't think anything has changed other than African Americans are legally allowed to do things that we weren't in the past. I think that the only difference between now and back then is that everything is being recorded and everything is being posted on social media and everything is being exposed a little more. And with the Black Lives Matter movement, I see a lot of just saying what the problem is and talking about what's wrong and talking about what needs to be done, but there isn't a lot of educational, like what's the word, educational approaches being taken, because a lot of the issue is that people don't know why this is wrong or don't know like why exactly these things are happening, especially people that I've talked to and stuff. Like there's a lot of questions just like how do you feel, like what is my part in all of this, what can I do to help, what can I do this. But on social media and stuff, all they see is riots, and all they see are protests saying what the issue is, rather than spreading that awareness educationally and actually informing people on what they can be doing and what they should be doing, especially on the wider part of America.
How about you, Sydney?
I would say I definitely agree with what Gavin was saying. For me, like I kind of was like mentioned earlier, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to process. And I think that, going to like one of my first protests ever, like it was a lot of people that kind of knew like what was going on, kind of knew they wanted to make a change, but didn't necessarily know like what to do. I'm here. I'm here. I'm showing myself that I want to make the change. I want to help. But you go home and you're not really given any steps to take, or like you're not really sure like what the game plan is going forward. And I think that leaves room for a lot of people to kind of come up with their own agendas or their own ways to do it right. So like as a whole, like I feel like we need to come up with like a plan, like as a community, as a people, to really get on the same page. And then that's when I think we can really start to make a change. Like our leaders need to come together, our churches all need to come together on one page. And instead of focusing on like this little group or this little group, let's all just like really like sit down and be like, this is going to be the most impactful thing that we can do as a community to propel our people forward and to make the changes that we all want to see and things like that. And I don't think that we've done that yet.
So I do have another question off of that. Some of you go to a PWI. Some of you either attended a PWI. What type of conversations have you had to have with your peers? Because in this time, you learn a lot about people. Like people like you to a point, but do they love you? And so, and I think about, let's take Kobe into consideration. People love Kobe, but they might not like the Lakers. People love Sydney, but they might not love all the Black people behind that Sydney team. So what type of conversations do you have to have with people for them to understand what Black Lives Matter instead of throwing in all lives matter, blue lives matter? So let's talk about those difficult conversations that you have to have.
And really quickly, can you just tell us what a PWI is, just in case there's someone in the audience who doesn't know?
Okay, you're right. A PWI is a predominantly white institution, and it can be high school, it can be college. I went to HBCU. I went to the first 1837 Cheney University. Got to throw it out there. Beloved going to an HBCU. That's what's up. You get different kind of love at an HBCU. So, but coming from a PWI, you experience things through a different lens. But now, when it comes to a worldwide issue, now the lens is a little bit different. So, I would love to hear your feelings about that.
So I have gone to a predominantly white institution literally since I think I stepped foot in kindergarten. Literally. I went to an extremely white high school. Even middle school, I was the only Black girl from 6th to 8th grade in middle school. And then when I got to 9th grade, there were 3 other Black girls, all the way up until I graduated high school in the entire class. So I'm very used to having to, I don't want to say explain myself, because I don't know if I want to use the word explain myself, but I am used to having those conversations, and I am very much in tune with my Blackness. And I realize that that's not a thing that everybody is in tune with, that does go to a PWI, or if whatever, whether they go to college or not. That's not always the norm. So when I got to college, there were a lot of privileged people who spoke out of term and were used to speaking out of turn and felt that it was okay. And then when the Black girl has something to say, you're angry, or you're hostile, or, it can never just be that I'm passionate, or I know who I am and I know what I stand for, and you're not going to disrespect me. You're not going to disrespect my history. You're not going to disrespect my people. And so I've had lots of those conversations, but in this time, I truly have not been having a lot of those conversations, because at this point, people are willfully ignorant. And as people get older, they don't like to change their perspective, I feel like. And because it's a lot of work, the minute that you show like a weakness in one side of your life, I think people are afraid of that spilling over into all other areas of their life. And they don't want to do the self work to get them to a point where like, you're just a better human being, I guess. So you'd rather stick to what you know and not have to do the work of changing that mentality and your outlook.
I want to share my perspective because I've changed it. I started out at HBCU and I'm at like a PWI now. And for me, like I grew up like white school, like mostly white kids. Like I was the only Black girl to graduate in my class in high school. So I was excited to go to HBCU because I wanted to be around more people like me. But I feel like even when I got there, it was like, oh, you're from Syracuse, like you don't talk, like you don't sound Black, you're not this or that. So then it turned into like, you're not from DC, Brooklyn, or New York, you're not Black. So I was like, ugh, well, like if I don't fit in here, then I might as well go on back. Like, so that's kind of been my experience. So I think it like, there's so much that we need to like heal like as a people internally. And then we can really like be strong enough to like accept all of us first and then be able to like project a total healing onto other people. Because how are we going to ask white people to respect us if we're not respecting all of the way that we come, you know?
Yeah, you both said very, very important things that a lot of people don't understand. Privilege was talked about, perspective was talked about, and then the comfortability of just being around the same looking people. Like for me, I went to Christian Brothers Academy, which is a private PWI, and everybody in that school was white. Like when I walked in there, I felt so out of place because my whole life I've gone to like a public school, which is predominantly Black. And like when I graduated and actually started like getting out more and hanging out with people, the people that I would hang out with the most were white. And there's a comfortability, not saying it's for all Caucasian people, but the way of life for white people is very, very ordered and very comfortable to the part where if something like tries to interrupt that path or tries to interrupt that process, it's either looked down upon or it's brushed off to the side because it's not understood completely. And when white people have Black friends and something like an injustice or something racist happens, it's not really taken as a priority because it's confusing, and it's not understood because it wasn't taught when they were growing up. Racism isn't a choice, it's a rooted mentality. And a lot of people learn racism when they're growing up, and it's not always intentional. Sometimes it's just instinct. Like if I'm with a Black person and I see something that looks weird or whatever, I'm gonna shy away from that because it's uncomfortable and I'm not used to that process, or I'm not used to that way of life or mentality. So a lot of it for me comes from ignorance. Like I remember that there was a time I went out to eat with a group of my white friends, and it was literally just me. I was the only Black guy, and they all ordered Sprite from the restaurant, and I ordered water. And they're like, bro, like, why are you ordering water? And I said, relax, because I'm different. And the waitress, who also was white, said, yeah, we all know, and stuff. And they all laughed it off. Like they're like, ha ha, it's funny and stuff like that. But for me, it made me feel so out of place because I knew what she was referring to. And I also knew that it was spoken from a place of authority, to where if I were to act out, or if I were to respond to that, you just kick me out of the restaurant. You know what I mean? Reject my services. So it was kind of a lose-lose. But stuff like that is like the kind of conversations that we need to have with our white friends, or with someone that isn't of color, because that stuff isn't taught when we're kids anymore.
To bounce off of Sydney, it is hard going to, well, I didn't go to, I don't know, it was mixed. It was mostly like Turkish people, but like I never felt like really in place. Like I never felt really like Black enough because I'm so light and like the rest of my family is darker than me. I never felt really like, I don't know, Black enough, I guess. But then when I got to school, I never felt like them either. So like I was just always out of place. Like I don't have a lot of friends, none of that. Like I've been cool with everybody, but nothing like I want to be there, you know. And then to bounce off of what Gavin said, with having to be in like a predominantly not your race place in school, like I used to have to sit either in like next to the wall or in the back because my hair is too big or because your hair is distracting the rest of the class, and that's like but yeah.
Beloved, you touched on something that I would love to raise this question to everybody on the panel because it's such a rainbow of beautiful complexions on here. Does everybody understand the light-skinned, dark-skinned, that the power and what people see? Like, have you all experienced that before? Like, where are you dark enough? Are you light enough? Do you speak a certain way? Does anybody else have that kind of experience?
I've had that experience, being that I'm considered a dark-skinned person. In elementary school, I was in a public school, so it was like a mixture of white people, black people. But I've always had the question, why are you so black? And I think when I was younger, it was just like I didn't know how to answer because I'm just like, this is my color. I can't do anything about it. This is how I was born. But once I got older and my skin was still a problem to some people, it was just like, this is my skin. I love my skin. If you don't understand that, then that's your problem. It's not for you to understand because, again, it's not your skin. But also with my skin color, with work, I've had to deal, I think in my 20 years of living, I've never had to deal with a racist comments until now. A couple weeks ago, not even a couple weeks ago, I think it was last week, I had one of my managers that I work with try to make a joke about food that was burnt. And she tried to brush it off. And I'm just like, with what's going on right now, you making those comments is not the right time. It's never a right time, but now is really not the right time. So it was just like, once she said that, I had to keep my composure with that, only because when people say stuff like that, being that I've dealt with that since I was a kid, my anger can go from 0 to 1,000 like that. So with that, it was just like it wasn't that I had to brush it off, but I had to keep myself together, being that I was at work. But then it was just like, how do I address it to her? Because these comments are not going to keep being made, being that there's only 2 Black managers and all the rest are white. So it's just like, you have to learn your limit when you're talking to certain people about certain stuff when it comes to the race card.
Go ahead, Sydney. I definitely have had tons of microaggressions, and at this point, I don't even think they should be considered microaggressions. It's racism. A lot of the time that you're feeling microaggressions, especially what Gavin was talking about with being at the restaurant. So I've been told, I always get asked when I was younger, well, what's your ethnicity? Because your hair isn't Black. Well, where were you raised? You don't sound like you're from here. Oh, you're definitely from the suburbs. Just like little stupid things that come from a place of a lot of time of not knowing your own self-worth as a Black person, and internalized racism within our own community, and like the colorism within our own community that still has not been healed. There's an elitism in color in our own Black community that stems from slavery alone that I still think has not been addressed. And I think I see a lot of, especially strong Black women, definitely standing up for that now on social media a lot more than when I was younger. I definitely was not outspoken that much when I was younger, especially in elementary school. I was very shy. Guys would tell me, boys would tell me that I'm cute for a Black girl from another Black boy's mouth. So I'm just like I wish I had the words then that I have now for those young Black boys, because now these are young Black men who are now in the world probably still saying the same thing to another Black girl who is still trying to find herself, may succumb to, not understanding what is being said to her and feeling, worthless. So I totally echo what Sydney is saying about healing in our own selves, because what are we projecting in our own communities when we can't even when we have so much divide within ourselves, and we need more unity within our own community. So I definitely echo the sentiments of everybody else.
You literally like took exactly what I was gonna say. Like growing up like with like white kids, like when they used to be like, "Oh, you're cute for a Black girl," I used to like be like, "Oh, thanks," like, and like think it was like a nice thing for somebody to tell me. But like now, like being like a 22-year-old woman and having like Black men like say the same things, like you literally I don't respond to it because it's like it's just really insulting. Like if you can't see me as who I am, period, like beautiful, regardless of what race I am or anything like that, then like you really truly do not respect who I am as a person, like where I come from, the people that made me who I am. And I think that like what you're saying with the self-healing thing, and it's really like sad that people think it's an appropriate like thing to say to like a Black woman, like, "Oh, you're cute for being Black." Like I think it's like it should really be canceled like as soon as possible, like in whatever way possible.
Yeah, and with that, then they're always mixed with something. Like, what are you mixed with? Like, I'm Black. And then he's like, no, what are you? I'm Black. Like, why can't I just be Black and light skinned? Like, it's toxic.
And I assure you, as you get older, it's not going to stop. So you're going to get the same question. Me, they question, am I Black? I got freckles, so my mom must be white, or my dad must be white, or there must have been a mailman, or somebody must have been in the mix. No, my mom and dad are Black, and yeah, I used to have hair, I used to be red, and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't change. So just educate yourself, and then you gotta educate them. You gotta, and then if they really try to get out of pocket, go back to George Washington. Go back to, well, if it wasn't for George Washington and the slaves, maybe I would have my original color, or, stuff. But that's for another conversation.
I have a question as it relates to the current climate that we're in politically, and you all have made some excellent points about we definitely have to address, the colorism issues that we have amongst ourselves, and we really have to do the work simultaneously, right? We have to deal with the inner workings of our own culture and ethnicity, which as Kyra alluded to or informed us, that stems back to basically slavery, 1619, when we were brought here, and those color stratifications were made with us and in between us throughout the diaspora, right? It's not just in America, it's in the Caribbean, South America, even in Africa. But those, and you all know, or let me tell you if you don't, race is a social construct. So the colorism that we experience and that we impose upon each other is a social construct that was imposed upon us by those who enslaved us to divide us even further, because they understood that, we were powerful, we were numbers. I mean, we had substantial numbers, right? And to keep us enslaved and to keep us oppressed and suppressed, they basically divided us in our minds. So they made us think that there was a difference among us. But we, you all know, and the change begins with us. We have to inform each other, not answering to, as Sydney said, when someone says, "Oh, you cute for light skin," putting the brakes on it right then. And then also for the young boys and girls that are coming up behind us, kind of telling them and, your children and your nieces and nephews, sisters and brothers, that they are beautiful and that we are Black. We are not a monolith of Black, right? We are diverse. We are nerds. We are athletes. We are scholars. We are writers. We are entrepreneurs, et cetera, et cetera. There's diversity within us, but all of our Black is beautiful. But I also want to go back to, or not go back because it's all related, but some of the things that are some of the more current events, right? And it's again, all related. So there's been a series of protests across the nation, you all in Syracuse. And so as Kenyon pointed out earlier, a lot of this is being led by young people like your generation, which I think is so powerful and so impressive. And Gavin kind of spoke to this, but I want to hear from everyone else and your perspectives. Do you think the protesting is effective? Is it working? And also, why now? Because there was Mike Brown, there was Sandra Bland. There were police killings before now. What was different? What do you think was different about this moment? And we can start with Diamari.
I really don't. That was a question for me. Why now? But I think my biggest thing is with everything that's going on right now, the protesting started with George Floyd. And then we've had 8 killings in our own town, and we're still protesting for that one person. Why are we not protesting for what is going on in Syracuse? Why are we not? Justice is still not being served for people here, but we're still on George Floyd. I understand like it's George Floyd, we've seen the video, but even though we haven't seen what's going on here, it's still the same. A Black person was still killed. And with what's going on here in our town, Black people are killing Black people. So it's like we're saying Black Lives Matter, but Black people are killing Black people. So it's just like you have to put it all together and really think about it. Like, we're protesting for this one person. Why aren't we protesting for the 3 lives that were taken in the matter of 2 or 3 weeks here in Syracuse? I think that's my question, why we need to protest on what's happening, not just out of town, but here also.
Anybody want to chime in or attempt to answer that one?
I'll try to answer a little bit of what you're saying. And I don't know how to say this, but I'll just say it. So I don't think that we're protesting just for George Floyd. I think George Floyd is the tip of a very large iceberg, and just like with an iceberg inside of an ocean, you cannot see. The majority of an iceberg is underneath the water. So I think, and to also answer Dr. LaRonda's beginning question as well, why now? I think because COVID and we're all at home and we're all on our phones all the time, we have time. We have a lot of time. And normally we all have to either go to work, we have to go to school. For the most part, we really don't have that. And I really feel like the Black community is just tired, because if you haven't learned anything from this time, I think it's really shown the intersectionality of the Black community and all the disparities that come with that. So the healthcare within the Black community, how we're disproportionately more prone to die from COVID and get COVID because many of us are essential workers, because these are the only jobs that we have and we have to feed our families. So that's just the healthcare, but then you have to deal with the law. The law is supposed to protect you, and now we're not having protection. And I would really push people to like do their due diligence with as far as research is concerned. And I know that that sounds like a little bit academic, but it really doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be staying on not a phone or a computer for hours on end and looking at these scholarly materials, but just like reading a few articles here and there. Just literally Google Black Lives Matter. You can, so you understand the inception of the movement in itself. I have a little bit of knowledge on political protest. That's just what I've studied for 6 years, 5 years. So like, I understand that, but it is out there for everybody. It's just a quick Google, quick Wikipedia, whatever you need. The Black Lives Matter movement was started for the injustice of police brutality. And that's all it really was started for. That's it. And there's plenty of other movements that we can also join that focus on inner city, inner crime, violence within our own local communities. There are plenty of grassroots and nonprofits that are looking for people to volunteer all the time, that are looking for advocates, that are looking for activists who are passionate. I see a lot of activism and a lot of advocacy, but that goes with who are you around? Who are you, who do you have on social media? So if you're a huge activist, you have a lot of activists on your page. So you see a lot of activism on your page. If you are new to this, which is totally okay, the more the merrier. If you're new to this, you don't have that, you're not seeing it all the time. This is something that I'm seeing all the time in different ways. And I know that it's not just Black Lives Matter. I know that there's plenty of organizations out there that focus on cleaning up neighborhoods, helping the schools. Even just here in Syracuse, I've been able to witness, just from being here a year, so many organizations and so many policies that are trying to be pushed to help the education sector in this community alone, dealing with the Martin Luther King School on the South Side. Like, if you do the work, you can see, but the media doesn't cover those things because it's not important to them. So you can't just be swayed by what Facebook is showing you or what Instagram is showing you. A lot of people are just retweeting and hashtagging what is popular and what's in the media. And a lot of times that's not the real narrative that's on the ground. Public opinion versus what's, in the government is very different.
Yeah, so George Floyd became like the poster, the thing that people really understood, especially Caucasian people. They got to see it. It wasn't like a fictional character anymore. This was something that really happened in front of them. And when it comes to Black on Black, there's a deeper issue going on there. It's like, do we not love each other enough anymore that my best option is to kill you? Not a conversation, not knuckling up, but again, that goes back to what has been fed to us a long time ago. So when it comes to for people of color, you learn about slavery, you learn about Martin Luther King. Now you learn about Barack Obama. You learn nothing else about the kings and queens that have come and gone before that. So now you see these brothers, especially brothers, going at each other because they haven't learned to love themselves. So now it's easy to be angry, and then the video game and the music, it just makes them just want to kill. They want to kill, and then after the fact, they want to reflect instead of like, let me put this in perspective. Let me do what if I disagree with somebody, I disagree with them. But right now, and then it's glorified. You get bragging rights. You get, now you get more room to throw out. It's all by design, but it all starts off with not knowing yourself, not knowing our history, and then we just go out and we just attack one another. That's just my opinion. But it's so many levels to it. And we have to do better within our own community. We have to.
I think that's like something like major, like where you're talking about how like Black people don't always feel like they can express themselves in a different way. And I think that goes back to like even like just like mental stability. Like Black people are not always diagnosed with like the proper things because like Black people are like, go drink some ginger ale or go have some saltine crackers and like that'll like solve all your problems. But like, what do you guys, Ria or Minister Ria or Deacon Black, what do you guys have to say about like Black people dealing with like mental health and things like that?
I'm gonna let Ria jump on that one. Ria.
So I think honestly, it's just what's ingrained in us. I can't tell you how many times like I've heard people will come into session or individuals and they'll be like, oh, I want my mom to come or I want my partner to come, but they don't want them people in our business. And I'm like, what is like, one, who are those people? And secondly, in my brain, I'm like, I have my own stuff to worry about. The last thing I want to do is know extra things about you that I don't need to know or that's not going to help you progress to where you need to be. Or I've heard, just pray about it. Give it to God and, it'll be all better. And I know Pastor has said countless times, when you are sick, like physically sick, while yes, we may pray about it, but we also go to our doctor who is the expert at telling us or diagnosing like physically what's going on. And the same is with a therapist, or I've gotten, well, I'm not crazy, so I don't need a therapist. And it's not about like being crazy per se, because literally everybody thinks differently. Everybody's experiences impact them differently. So I'm a firm believer of like, why not get outside perspective from somebody who's received the education and has received the clinical training to help you best kind of process what you're going through, or how to help you get to where your next level is, or what you need help with.
I believe culturally, we, like Minister Ria said, we've made it part of our practice to like, yeah, you got a cough, put some tussin on it. Your elbow kind of sore, drink some ginger ale. And people actually live by that. And so, and unfortunately, we come from a time where we had to do everything on our own. And then now the things that are happening in society is much greater than grandma's remedy. We have to be able to seek and get counseling from people. People are carrying things on their backs right now that is life-changing. And they might be doing very well in life, but they're still harboring this demon that they have never dealt with, and they have to, or it's going to be passed on to your next generation. So now the way that I handle things, if I don't handle it right, now my daughter's not going to handle it right, because they've always seen me not handle it right. So we have to do a better job of communicating and getting help when we need it to stop the domino from continuing to fall generational.
Gavin, did you have something you wanted to add? Oh, great, perfect.
Yeah. I feel like the biggest thing, because it is generational and it is an engraved mentality, and I feel like the biggest thing is teaching how to express yourself rather than essentially like awareness and actually like doing the part. Because a lot of the time, if like say for example, I used to go play basketball with my little brother at the park all the time, and when he would get upset, he would show his emotion and he would show that he was upset rather than reflecting on why he's upset and trying to come up with mechanisms to kind of sway away from those actions and showing that he's upset. And I feel like that's a part of why all these riots and why all these angry Black people are being posted on social media, because it's like, okay, I'm trying to cry for help, and I'm trying to show you that there's a lack in the American system, and the only way that you guys hear me is by me being violent, and is by me doing what you guys say we do, or doing what you think Black people do. And it doesn't get heard until there's a number of Black people doing it in those manners. And for educated people like you guys yourselves that are able to talk about it, and they're able to actually articulate themselves in what the problem actually is, that's the way it should be heard. But a lot of the Black community, they don't know how to do that for their own reasons, and systematically we're in areas in which that don't really teach us how to do so. So I feel like the biggest component we need to tackle is teaching and learning how to actually express emotion and express what the problem actually is.
Beloved, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I want to go back to what Diamari said about Black on Black crime.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem. It's a big problem. I mean, and with Gavin said, we need to learn how to express ourselves differently. But with that, a Black person is not killing another Black person just because they're Black. Most times, the white on Black crime is because of race, and that's why we're protesting and rioting and all of that, because we're tired of white people killing us for really no reason. Like, they have absolutely no reason most of the time. Sometimes they have reason, but so with that, yeah, I don't know. I just lost my train of thought, but yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. And if it comes back, just ping us. But I just wanted to say also to Diamari, I totally can empathize with how you were feeling, especially with the recent, onslaughts of murders that have happened in the town, in Syracuse, as you've began to enter into phase one. But dare I say, I view the protest and what I would call the awakening, right? The 2020 awakening a little bit different. Yes, it's Kenyon said this also. George Floyd was the face and the catalyst, but like Kyra said, the issues that Black people and the racism that Black people experience, it's an iceberg, right? It's very deeply embedded. And when you think about, and I don't like to use the word Black on Black crime, because it does sound like we're saying that it kind of is just something that we just doing to each other for the heck of it, when it's not, because the reasons why we see our brothers with this art with each other, and the murder between each other, this is trauma. It's trauma that we have experienced since the day we set foot on these grounds called that eventually became the United States. It started in 1619. We were enslaved for hundreds of years, and then after being free, there was this period of reformation, but it was very short-lived, and then we were basically left with nothing. Then we became sharecroppers, where Black people were basically forced to work for free. And from that point, there was Jim Crow. You can't use the same bathroom. You're not allowed the same access to schools and education. And when you think about it, our brothers and sisters who engage in violence with each other, unfortunately, it is because of that drama that is passed down from generations. You have to think about, like, these generally tend to be people living in poverty, right? They're living in areas where there's blight, where there's abandoned buildings, and it's frustrating. And because we don't have access to these mental health resources, what have you, we don't know how to deal, as you all are saying, we don't know how to deal with that emotion, because we're not taught that, we don't know the importance of therapy. Or maybe our parents and forefathers used the rubber testing as an excuse because they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the knowledge, to seek mental health. And it's an issue of again, systemic, it's institutionalized racism. And what I see when I see the protests, even what they call looting and rioting, and that's not the only form of looting that exists, because corporations loot all the time, but that's another conversation for another Zoom call. But I, again, like to Kyra's point, to me, George Floyd was the tip of the iceberg. And people are in Syracuse and they are mad about, our friends and our loved ones who are dying in the streets for what we see senseless violence. And I do believe that, the coming together that we are seeing is truly unprecedented. I'm years old, and, I haven't lived, a long time, but I've never seen anything like this, though I've lived through, a lot of, and observed a lot of gang violence, etc. But I really do believe that this time is different. So I just want to encourage you that when you see the protest, I do believe that it's not just about George Floyd. People are ready for a change on just a swath of different levels, and I hope and pray to see it. And I believe with the minds that you all are clearly articulating here, with you at the forefront, with you guys as being the leaders, it's definitely going to happen. We're going to have a better and a brighter future, and I'm excited about it.
I just want to. Sorry, go ahead, Rhea.
So I just want to chime in really quickly and encourage everyone. So there's Dr. Joy DeGraw. I might be botching her last name up, but definitely do your research. She has founded a theory called post-traumatic slave syndrome. And she really, when I tell you, she does an in-depth, like, go back to the beginning of time of just how we as African-American people and people of color, like what that trauma looks like and how it gets passed down from generation to generation. And being in the mental health field, you can also do your research. There are studies that show that trauma is passed down in utero. So mom can carry them, and they can then be adopted to, like, your stereotypical family or have that white picket fence upbringing. But because of stuff that because of genetics and stuff that their mom has experienced, like, trauma is passed down in utero. And again, you guys kind of touch on all of this stuff. Again, like poverty plays a part, but again, because I can talk about this all day and I don't want to digress. Research Dr. Joy DeGraw, post-traumatic slave syndrome, because that will really like highlight what we're talking about, the iceberg. If she really gets down to the nitty-gritty or some of the stuff that's underneath it, we can't see. And then do your research just to see how trauma can be passed down in utero.
I know we have to, it's around 8:15 and we have a 8:30 stop. So just to make sure we cover, a lot of what we intended to, one of the goals from co-pastor Twiggy, I know, was to talk about policies and, what you all think you can do or can at least start to do or start to think about moving forward to evoke some of the change that that we know is needed, and what to do regarding police reform, crime within our neighborhoods, poverty, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe for the last few minutes that we have together, if we could kind of pivot the conversation to what do you all want to see? You can start from your nation. As a nation, I know I want to see a new president. From a national perspective, but I know your Syracuse community is very near and dear to your hearts, as it is near and dear to mine too, because I spent a lot of time there working on the southwest side of Syracuse, at the Promised Land Church. So what do you think, what does police reform look like in your community? What would you like to see? Because we hear the term defund the police, right? And let's say, I know we can get lost in semantics, like what does defund mean? But they've been defunding your educational system for a long time, and y'all still graduated. But I'll use the word reform. So what does a reform police establishment look like to you, or what does it look like to you, and what's something you think that you can do to start to make that happen, or what is it that the older people need to do to make that happen? And also, what would you like to see change in your community, in your city of Syracuse, such that we can begin to address the crime that occurs within our neighborhoods and within our communities?
I guess I could start. As far as myself, what I've been trying to do, for a few years at this point, is trying to unlearn a lot. There are things that we have learned as just Americans, as Black Americans, as a generation from slavery. There's a lot of things that just in our, you could tell just from the way we speak and the way we reference things and ideologies that we hold, we can see that it's very generational and a lot of times and traditional. And just because it was done in the past doesn't mean it has to be done now. And I think I'm really trying to change not just my perspective, but just unlearning things that I think that are kind of toxic sometimes, or that just don't help. And of course, not to, come on, Damari, but when you mentioned Black on Black crime, like I think that is an example of some things that we should unlearn as a community together. That is a term that was coined by white people to derail the conversation about the issues that are systemic and institutionalized, and I will not use that term. So I think if we just do a little bit of self-work in that area, we'll be able to progress as a community a little bit more. I'm not really sure what I want as far as police reformation is concerned, like hard materialized change, because I also don't know enough. I'm still trying to educate how the structure of the police is versus, there's county, state, like federal, all of those different levels are very hard to understand. So one, I would really like for that stuff to be taught in school so that it can be broken down to us at a very young age, so that I don't have to major in criminal justice or something like that in order to know how my society is run. And there's a lot of it's just draining. I don't even know if I want to say draining. It's just it's hard to teach all of yourself this stuff at such a young age. Like if we have teachers and we're in school for 8-9 hours a day, why can't somebody teach this to us? And it is important. So I think I'd like for that stuff to be taught so that we can have a better opinion on things. And accountability and transparency are very big words in public administration. How do we make our leaders accountable to us? How do we make our leaders transparent to us? Because at the end of the day, we're the ones that put them there, or we're supposed to be the ones that are putting them there. So I think that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see a lot more external investigations instead of, the state being involved in trying to find the kinks, because at the end of the day, the system was made to hide their kinks. So if you have the same people looking and investigating, they're going to cover them up easily because it's not made to show their vulnerability. So that's all I know for now.
Sydney, what about you?
Man, that's tough, really. I think for me personally, to assess it as like a nationwide issue is like a lot. So for me, like how I said earlier, I'm just trying to like take it like friend by friend, like friend group, like from this school I know, from this school I know, from this school I know, and kind of like sharing the things that I'm learning with the people that come to me about the thing, like things that they have no idea about. So kind of how I'm choosing to kind of slowly the more I learn, because I don't want to get up on a big old platform and try to pretend like I know, because I mean, there's so many things I have to learn still. So I think the more that I learn about it, the more I'll be able to like share my voice even like further. Like, so for now, I'm just kind of sharing with the friends that like contact me and kind of like sharing like the posts I see, because at this point, at first, like I truly didn't feel like addressing the issue was important, because I feel like there's enough people that are already out there doing it. I don't think I need to really put my input into anything, because like, but the more that things are going, the more things aren't changing, the more I feel like I think that every little opinion does matter. Every voice does truly matter, because you don't know who your voice is impacting. For me, like, some people might not hear it otherwise. If it's not me, then you pass up on a chance of influencing a whole bunch of people you have no idea about. So I think that's kind of just been like my safe haven of like progress so far.
And beloved?
Okay, so I have been like researching more about our history because it's not taught in school, and like all of this has like opened my eyes to like this is a problem. Like it has been a problem for a while, like for longer than people have been talking about. So what I want to change or whatever is teaching our history in school, because our history is important not alone for Black little girls and boys, but for everybody. Like most things was invented by Black people, and nobody knows that. Like nobody is talking about what we've done and what we can do and stuff like that.
And Diamara?
I definitely agree with Sydney and Beloved. I don't really comment on certain stuff because, again, I'm a younger person, so I'm still learning as everything happens. So I think, like, when me and my friends have certain conversations about what's going on, when it comes to certain stuff that they point out, I don't really comment on. I just listen to what they're saying, only because, again, I'm still learning as everything is happening. Because, again, we weren't taught that in school. You learn about everything else but what you really need to know. So
Before I go to Gavin, I just want to say I can appreciate your sentiment about, being hesitant because you feel like you don't know. But even the person that you think is most knowledgeable is still learning. So I hope that, and what I want to emphasize is that you not let that be the impediment for you speaking your voice and stating your opinion, right? Because there is no one person that knows everything, and we are all learning. And with what you think, again, what you think is limited knowledge, it is expansive, and it stands to reach, to teach, and to change somewhere else, to change someone else, because you are the sum total of your experiences. And even though you haven't read all the books that there are to read, that's okay. Your opinions are valuable. the knowledge you have is valuable and it needs to be shared and it needs to be heard. So please, please don't make them. I made that mistake. I feel like in my younger years. So I hope and pray that, don't, that is not your impediment. Like your voice is important. What you have to say is important, et cetera, because what I did learn, and going through grad school, et cetera, is that a lot of people talking, even though they may sound like they know what they're saying, they really don't. And there's a quote I learned to live by, and it's like a prayer, if you will. And it said, Lord, if you just give me the confidence of a mediocre white man, right? A less than mediocre white man is the president, right? So if he has a platform to get up there and say something, please do not think that, because you are well qualified, intelligible, intellectual, all of that good stuff. So, let your voice be heard and don't be stifled by that. Gavin.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Because really, for true change, all we can really do is educate ourselves and spread that education and spread that knowledge. Because what we don't want to happen is we don't want to have this Black Lives Matter movement and all this awareness turn into a brand rather than an actual issue that needs to be solved. Because like all these police brutalities, they've been happening, and every single one has been exposed for like a good 2 months max, and then it just fades away and we kind of forget about it until the next one happens. And that's literally what America does in everything. They have trends for a couple months, and then it just dies down, and okay, what's the next thing? So educating yourselves and actually speaking from that knowledge rather than from the emotion, because like it's just like you can express how you feel, you can express how you have what feelings you have towards the situation, but at the end of the day, knowledge and education sticks longer rather than reacting off of emotion. So I feel like as individuals, and like Sydney said, spreading it with each friend group and informing people that are closest to you first, and let it spread into the bigger voices, and that, I feel like that's how it'll branch out into the rest of the nation, and that's how we'll get true change.
Deacon Black.
So we got to make sure we vote. When you have the opportunity, when you turn that age, you have to vote. You have to know who you're voting for. You can't worry about 45. You got to worry about the judge that's in Syracuse. You got to worry about the sheriff. You got to worry about all these people at the lower level, because that's the foundation that holds up that person up top. So you want to make sure that foundation is made of something that's strong and not clay and not, feathers and flowers and stuff like that. I appreciate all of you. Ms. Copeland, there's something about your energy. You got so much to offer. So I want you to make sure you know that. You are very much appreciated. I need you all, the young people, you're at a table that none of us will ever be able to get to. So you got to make sure you're educated and be able to check people when they come out of pocket. So you want to educate them. You got to make sure your allies are not just allies to you, but they're allies to the whole thing, love yourself, make sure you educate yourself. And like Beloved said, go beyond the book in the school. You got to go and read, find different authors. This panel right here, I'm pretty sure has enough knowledge and wealth and books that we've read that we got to share. Unfortunately, we come from a culture where everything that you learn, you keep it to yourself. You don't want nobody else to know about it. We gotta get it out there. We gotta get it out there. All of you are destined for greatness, and I appreciate all of you, and I'm praying for all of you. So thank you for letting me be a part of this.
I just want to quickly add, if I can, just that the vote thing. Completely agree. We should be voting. You should know about your local government, your state government, and your federal government. But I really want to put out there, and I hope this isn't just for young people, this is for anybody. The suppression of the Black vote is very real. While it is legal for us to vote, it is not accessible as it is for everybody else in the rest of the United States. So when you want to vote, make sure you do that due diligence, as well as to understand how the process works, how to get registered, how to get to the ballot. Studies have shown that bus routes in inner city urban America don't always take you to where you need to be. For people who don't have cars, it's not walking distance. So it's very real. But I also, for me, what it boils down to a lot is the people who we're voting for oftentimes don't matter regardless. That I didn't say that right. Sorry, they matter, but they're not representing us versus Democrats, Republican. So a lot of this, politics is okay. Well, I'm a Republican, so I'm gonna vote Republican. I'm a Democrat, so I'm gonna vote Democrat. I think it's time. I think we're in the time of a new type of leader. And I've been reading about Trayvon Martin's mother running for office, and I just think that is awesome because I think people think that they have to have, these law degrees, and that's great to have all of that, but you don't need that. And I really want young Black people to know that you can be a public servant too. You can run for your local office too. You can be a judge too. Like it doesn't have to be some old white guy that gets voted in to the assembly and the legislature and is a senator. Like you can do it too. A lot of the time, there's not even a lot of prerequisites to be in a lot of these positions that are offered at the county level. So if you want, you can do it too. And tell that to your friends and tell that to the people who may be older than you and younger than you. Because while voting is very important, but if there's no options for us to choose from, how are we getting change? And I feel like that's a lot of the time what the issue is these people don't represent us at all. And I feel like that's the hopelessness that a lot of young people feel. And I don't want that to be the case. I don't want people to feel hopeless, and I do want people to vote. But what I've witnessed and what studies have shown as far as voting turnout in age groups is very low for people under the age of 30 because they feel like it doesn't matter anyway. But it does matter, obviously, because we've seen that it matters, and we've seen with over the years who's in office that it doesn't matter. But I just want everybody to know that you can be a public servant too.
You know what? Before we move on, you are so right. That's why y'all have to get to the table, get to the platform to change the laws. Like you gotta use your voice to get out there, and you can be the one to read the book, change the book, rip the book up, and create new laws. We're living off of laws that were created hundreds and hundreds of years ago that does not pertain to what's going on right now. That's why people are so quick to say, "Oh, that's the law. That's what the Constitution said." Yeah, but the Constitution was written by white men that was in favor of making sure white men had certain platforms. Now we got to stop blaming them. Let's get in there, change the room, change the atmosphere, because when you're in the room with them, they're more likely to watch their tone. And okay, now your voice is going to matter. So everybody, speak up, speak up. Look at your allies. Make sure your allies are people that are down for the cause, people. Make sure they're down for the cause.
Well, thank you all so much for participating. I certainly have enjoyed and learned a lot. I just want to wrap it up with I made a few notes of some important takeaways that I just want to reiterate. As we discussed COVID, we said that it was okay to grieve the losses from COVID, but also to look for the blessings. We shared some coping mechanisms, which included mindfulness and meditation. We acknowledge that there is some healing that needs to be done within our own communities, and that starts with us and how we treat and talk to each other, what we accept and don't accept, and how we bring up the young people that are coming up behind us. Also, we emphasize that it's important to unlearn the distorted and the biased history, right, that we were taught in school, right, from elementary to high school to even college. And as we are learning to educate those around us, even if whether it's people on our social media platform or the handful of friends within our sphere of influence, and also to vote, and not just vote, consider running for office, consider managing someone's campaign, or encourage other people that you think would be good and represent your ideas and your thoughts and the change that you want to see to run for office. And, again, we are not a monolith. We are Black, but we are not a monolith. And, Black is beautiful and Black lives do matter. I hope that you all can continue this conversation as you will. I'm confident that you all have so much to add, and I'm really excited about a future that we have with you all at the forefront of leadership And again, there's a room in activism for everyone, whether you are posting on social media, whether you're on the front lines marching, whether you're writing songs, or whether you're educating your coworker or telling your manager that, you know, hey, what you said is not okay. All of it's activism, all of it's important, and all of it's key to truly generate the future that we're looking forward to. And just want to leave you with, you know, in spite of it all, remember that all things work to the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And I'm excited about you called young people. So have a good night.